Yeah, good morning, all. So we already spoke about ADDM, AWR report, and other database problems, right? And we already have a setup that is created with all some dummy data. We have few scripts. Hopefully, I'll be showing all the different reports that how we have to generate different reports with different data to identify all the performance problems. And today we are going to talk about something called ASH report, active sessions history. So how many of you know what is ASH report? How do you generate it? And why do we need to generate ASH? Anyone of you have any idea on what is ASH in Oracle? No idea? Basically, aid.
I think from the name it says that active session history, like it talks about the session, and generating it is similar to AWR reports. Instead of AWR, we'll give that as ASH and generate the report. That is
Yes. So ADDM basically it captures the report every 1 hour, right? Every 1 hour it automatically collects some data. It will analyze some sample data, whatever the data that has been collected every 1 hour in AWR or in ADDM. It will try to identify all the different bottlenecks. But the main agenda of ASH report is it will try to identify all the transient performance problems. What is a transient performance problem? I told you, right? Most of the problems are transient problems, which are very short-lived, okay? And they do not appear in any of AWR or ADDM.
Okay, and then errors per minute you can see a trend, and then your hardware utilization your
Can all of you mute your lines, please?
and then you can see how many times your error happened like that. You can see the dashboards are available. Why I'm showing this
I'm taking a class on the same Zoom again. All right. So there is some data that has been collected, which is called sample data to identify all the transient problems. Okay, these transient problems are basically they are called short-lived problems, and most of the times they are not reproducible. Okay, we cannot reproduce the same kind of performance problem, but however, to capture that temporary problem, which is also called transient problem, which is very short lived, that is only possible to see that in the ASH report. Again, most of the performance problems that are captured from ASH are uh, the DB time again. Any report, AWR or ASH or ADDM, primarily focuses on the impact on DB time. For example, you are running a test for 6 hours or 7 hours, or even it can be 1 hour. You have seen or you have observed a sudden spike in the CPU. What do you do now? You got my question, right? So you are running a test, you are monitoring your database. Your database CPU utilization is under 40%. Now you have seen some 80%. There is a sudden spike in the CPU utilization. What do you do now? What is the report that you need to look at?
I think AWR report.
In parallel with AWR and ADDM, if you see such activities, if you are seeing any of the sudden spike in the database, the first thing that you see is ASH report, because it will show you all the different sessions that are taking high amount of CPU time or high amount of DB time. It will split all the active sessions that are there inside your database, it can be on the single instance or it can be on multiple instances. You need to check which session is taking high amount of DB time and how high amount of CPU time. Okay, so there is also called active session history. So basically this active session history, what it will do is it will enable you to examine and perform the detailed analysis on all the sampled session activity that has been captured in this ASH report. Okay, so it is generating an ASH report is similar to the AWR report, not ADDM. ADDM is a different one. Like you select the start snap and end snap, you need to select the time that it has to capture. You will have some time period. It will ask you for the report name. It will ask you for, you need to go to Oracle Home. I told you, right? If you remember, I have mentioned you once one path in Oracle Enterprise Manager. You need to go to RDBMS will ASHRPT. Basically, whatever the report that you want to generate, those are all SQL scripts. Okay, every script, AWR report, ADDM report.sql, ASH report.sql, all the SQL scripts are basically stored under Oracle Home RDBMS admin. Either it can be AWR or ADDM or ASH. If you run the SQL script, right, the first thing that it will ask you is the report type. Even it is same for AWR, right? You text active text HTML, active HTML and text. Always the reason we select HTML, the reason is because irrespective of any browser that you use, you can open any browser and you can view the report. And it will ask you for the type of report. Then it will ask you for the begin time in minutes. Okay. Then you can give the time. It will ask you for the duration. You can give 30 minutes or 20 minutes or 10 minutes. And finally, it will ask you for the report name. You can name something and you can generate a report. Okay. You can generate ASH report on a specific database instance or on the local database instance. Even if you have multiple databases, the process for generating the ASH report is same. Okay. Only thing that you need to do is you need to give the duration, you need to select the type of the report, you need to name your report, and you have to generate the report. And you will be seeing a lot of different metrics like top events. I told you, right? The load profile that we see in the AWR, the same load profile will be generated in the ASH report. But here, the main important things that you see are the top SQL statements and the top PL SQL statements. This is one of the most important point. Whatever the top SQLs and top PL SQLs are there, which are taking very high amount of time, those are the main things that are creating the problem for transient performance problems, which are very, very short-lived. Not all the SQL queries will give you the problem continuously. There is one particular SQL query which keeps executing for millions of times or thousands of times, depending upon your scenario, depending upon the number of users that you're using and the type of testing that you're doing. But not every time a single query will not be a problem maker. Yeah, it is not uh, it is not the only SQL query which is always throwing a very bad performance issue. At some point, at one transaction, at peak time, if you have a very high user rate with high number of user calls, at that point, you will have a high CPU time and high DB time. And in such scenarios, there must be one SQL query with some PL SQL function, which is already working fine for the first 1 hour of your test. It will give you some problem in the second hour of your test. Okay. These are basically, it happens because of some of the wait events, and most importantly, you see many of the sessions taking high amount of time, again DB time or CPU time, with high resource utilizations. You will go to that particular session and you will see what is increasing with what session. Okay, if you look at the top events, right, the top events, uh, they are categorized by user, background, and priority. Basically, this is talking about uh, the top events, which are the user calls that are taking high amount of response times or high amount of DB or CPU time, along with the process that are running on the background. It will list down all the top events with something called priority. Okay, so this will top user, and even this top events will have three different things. Let me write here. In the top events, uh, okay. So these are the main important things that you see in the ASH report. You forget about the remaining areas. The reason is because if you go and read all of them, it is like learning a DBA course again. But activity over time. Okay, these are the different metrics that you see in the ASH report. You see the load profile. If you go back and see the top events, right, the first one before load profile, in top events you will have again something called top user events. Okay? This top user events, basically it will list down all the top wait events from user processes. Okay, whatever the processes that are associated with all the user calls, it will list down all the top wait events which are having high utilization of all the resources and which are taking high amount of CPU time and DB time. Every time what you have to remember is we are only primarily focusing on something called DB time. If you are optimizing, if you're trying to reduce any of the DB time, it will improve both the throughput and response time of your database. I already told you in the last class, if you remember, the DB time or CPU time, it will also have a very big impact. It will have a very high number because of something called wait events. In the wait events or the top events, you see some user events with respect to users along with the background processes, and there is something called background events. Okay, it will list down all the top wait events from backgrounds, whatever that is running from the background. It will also list down in the ascending order, which is consuming high CPU and DB. So only straight shortcut for us to identify is any of the values should not increase. Most importantly, top events, top SQL and top PL SQL and top sessions. And even if you take the top activity over time, top objects also, that is not your job. The DBA will look into all these issues and he will try to fix all of them in one. Okay? So if you talk about the top events, right? All the top weight events with the highest percentages of all the sampled sessions. So if you're talking about any of the events, right? There is a value called P1, P2, P3, assigning some priority level to all the top events. Actually, it will calculate along with the sessions. Whichever session is taking high percentage of the utilizations, it will whatever the data that has been captured by the ASH report, it will it will show you the session activity along with the top events, and it will assign a value called P1, P2, P3. Okay, that is nothing but some kind of priority of all the events that are waiting. So if you go to the load profile, I told you, right, it is similar to AWR report, but whatever the parameters that you see in AWR report for under load profile, and the other parameters that the parameters that you see for load profile in ASH are completely different. In load profile in ASH report, you will be seeing the SQL commands and the sessions that uh, which are that are causing the transient performance problems, right? You will see the SQL queries and also the sessions under this load profile. And there is something called top services, top SQL command types, and top phases of execution. These are the three important things. So there is one PPT to go through all these concepts. I'll send you after the class. You can look at that PPT, and I have also prepared one document for your better understanding. It is clearly mentioned what are all the metrics that you need to look at and what are the different bottlenecks that you can see, and how you can identify them is the important question. Okay, so you can see the top SQL. This is the, even if you forget the remaining metrics, the most important point is the top SQL. Okay, so the top SQL will will list down all the SQL statements that have the highest percentage of the collected data, whatever the sampled session activity history, the sample data that you have that has been captured from ASH. It will show you all the top weight events with all these SQL statements. Okay, most of the SQL statements will have some issues with rows, tables, with elapsed time, problems with indexes, uh, with hard parsing, soft parsing. At the end of the class, at what parsing or soft parsing, because of how to use the SQL queries that take
Not able to hear you, RK.
no, what I'm trying, is it better now?
Yeah, can hear you now.
Actually, the SQL queries I'm talking about, right? Whatever the SQL queries with some PL SQL functions which are taking very long time, basically that are because of something called hard parsing and soft parsing too. And I'll tell you, I'll explain you what is hard parsing and soft parsing in the end of the class. And you have to mainly look at it. It will be very easy for you to understand. You will have a graphical representation of this data, like what are the parameters that you need to look at, and you will see the spikes and some pie chart diagrammatic representation of all these top PL SQL statements or the procedures with highest percentages. And also you see the top sessions. What does a session contain? Anyone of you know what does a session contain? We're talking about something called session, right?
It's
No
about the
idea.
user information and the actions or the queries related to the user.
Sorry, come again.
No, it's when we say session, it is about user session. So it will be having the user detail and also the user actions or user queries. Basically, what are all the queries executed by that particular user? Those details.
Right. So again, if we go back and talk a lot about that sessions, right? You'll have something called server session and client session, database session. There is something called session broker and remote session. Basically, this session contains all the complete information of the user. Okay. So it has a lot of data of all the user calls, objects, and it also contains some kind of what mm, information of I mean of like what that information will contain is a lot of information. I mean there are a lot of parameters of that particular session. So there is some data of a user call of everything that from the connection side, from the session side, everything, all this data is will be available in something called session, and the data is huge. If you Google what is the information that a session contain, it will show you a lot of information with lot of other parameters. So you can understand from that. And I told you, right, the most important thing that you need to look at is only the top SQL. Okay, and last thing, you will not be involved in. You can take a report. You can see the numbers of all these metrics. I mean, of all the parameters of all the sampled session data that has been captured from ASH report, but you will not be able to take any of the decision by looking at these numbers. You will definitely need your DBA help to understand what are the top objects by percentages, what are all the top files by percentages, or what are all the type of contention that it is impacting your throughput or response time by percentage. Okay, even if you look at all the top DB objects, you can with the help of ASH report. I have written one point here, right? Top objects, files, and latches. You can see the top DB objects. Okay, the top DB objects. Actually, what it will show you is it will show you the list of database objects, and database objects are nothing but tables and indexes. Okay, so again, it will list down all the uh, tables and indexes in the context of DB objects. It will show you which index or which table is taking highest amount of memory, highest amount of CPU, DB time, and CPU time. Every time you try to identify something, if you want to optimize something, you see all the attributes in every section and you try to identify which DB object is taking high amount of DB time. If the DB time is increasing, it means that you have too many you have some wait events. Okay, the wait event can wait for it can wait for some time. It is not predefined. It depends upon how your database is designed, how your application is designed, or how effectively the load test is happening. And if you have a very big wait event that will wait for some time, and the DB time is the sum of the CPU time and the wait time of all the wait events, right? When it is waiting, when it is calculating all the wait time of all the wait events, it will affect the DB time. When you have high amount of DB time, it will show a very negative impact on your throughput and response times of your database. When your DB time is high, your obviously it will increase your CPU, it will increase your memory, it will increase your disk. Obviously, it will trigger something and it will create some kind of bottleneck. Okay, so you can also look at all the top DB files, which will list all the top DB files that are eating more amount of resources and also the CPU time and DB time. And the simple shortcut of ASH report is it will focus only on the DB time of your database, which is increasing your DB time. This is the only agenda of your ASH report. And what will increase the DB time in ASH report? The transient performance problems, which are very short-lived, and you cannot see that short-lived performance problems in any of your ADDM or AWR report. it will show very negative impact on your DB time. So ASH is very important to identify the short-lived problems, and you can simply generate an ASH report by going to the SQL prompt into the Oracle Home RDBMS. You can access your scripts under RDBMS admin. You can simply double click on ASHRPT.SQL script. It will ask you for some inputs. If you give them, it will generate a report. And this is actually, we are covering this part as part of our performance sessions, but you got nothing to do with the ASH report. You will not be allowed to touch any of, you can take the ASH report, but you will not be allowed to take any of the decisions on the database by just looking at the parameters or the numbers in your ASH report. Okay? And ASH report can be taken at any frequency of time. You can take it for 3 minutes, you can take it for 30 minutes, you can simply select the date, you can simply select the time, that's all. Okay? And because of this AWR, ASH and ADDM, you will see many issues. Okay? For example, you are load testing. Okay, you are running a load test. The application is connecting and disconnecting every database interaction. What does it mean? And understand the question very clearly. If I have an application, you cannot. This is one. I'm talking about the top 10 bottlenecks that I have identified from AWR, ASH, and ADDM. Now I am asking you one question. The application is, every time I'm doing a load test, something like a pilot run, before I decide whether I can run the test for 4 hours or 8 hours or 5 days, I'm trying to run my test for 15 minutes initially, for 20 with 25 or 50. Can all of you mute your lines, please? So now the application is connecting and disconnecting every time I try to access it for each of the database interactions. Can you tell me what could be the reason? Why it is connecting and why it is disconnecting? No one experienced such scenarios?
Maybe network issues.
It can be because of network, and
Yeah.
anything, any other answers? Basically, this problem is very, very common with stateless middleware in any of the application server that you use. So every time if you see an instant like this, when you try to connect to your application, it is getting connected, and if it is immediately getting disconnected, you will see lot many HTTP errors. It can be 4xx or 5xx errors. This happens only because of the bad connection management. This bad connection management will happen directly from the application design. You cannot, even if you monitor all the metrics from the Oracle database, you will not be able to identify the problem is because of the database. If you are looking at some scenarios, right? If you have a bad connection management, every time you are trying to access your application when you're during your load test, so you cannot go back to your database and you cannot start your tuning activity, right? You need to understand what is the issue. If you have a very bad connection management from your application design, it cannot accommodate the connections, and every time some user is trying to access the application, connect, and immediately it can disconnect immediately, or it can disconnect in the next 60 seconds, or it can disconnect in the next 5 minutes. So every time a user is getting disconnected, it means that it is breaking a session. The session is getting killed, right? You may think that I have done my correlation, I have correlated all my dynamic script, but still, why am I getting all this 503 errors? I am hearing a lot of disturbance today. I mean, in the call, I don't know why. Let me mute all of you, if anyone of you.
I think so.
You can unmute and you can talk. Okay, it's not a problem. If you have a question, you can unmute and you can talk. I have set that option. Okay. So the first thing is the bad connection management is always a bottleneck. Okay. It is not always necessarily fixing the database. Tuning the database will not improve anything. You need to check the connection management. Okay, there is a separate team who takes care of the connection management. Okay, how the connections are happening. You can. Okay, I'm sorry. Do you know what is bad use of cursors and the shade pool? This is one thing I'll tell you when I explain it to you. The soft parsing and hard parsing, and most importantly, intentionally, no SQL developer will write a bad SQL query, but 50 to 60% of the issues with respect to response times and throughput of your database is just because of a single word bad SQL statement. You can also say it is high load SQL statement. Okay? So bad SQL, why am I calling it as a bad SQL? If I have a long running query, what that SQL will do, what it will do to my database? Can anyone tell me what does a bad SQL mean?
If the SQL is not written by following the best practices um, or optimized in an optimized way, that will cause a lot of high response time and high resource usage. Those things. That's the bad SQL. We can call it as a bad SQL. And the impact should be like that. Like we will have adverse impact on performance.
Right. Bad SQL, the word bad SQL itself tells us that particular SQL is using more resources of your database. Okay. That is very, very inappropriate for the application requirement. So if one single SQL query is taking more resource, it is eating all the memory and CPU, obviously it will show a very big impact on your response times. Okay? So basically, you must be getting the question. Most of you will ask you, how do you take a call on a bad SQL statement? Or what are your next steps when you see a high load SQL statement? Or what is that you do from your side? You cannot directly go back and rewrite the SQL function, but you can, being a performance engineer, you can do you can take one specific action. Okay, you can investigate what are all the top SQL statements that are consuming the significant. Is this one? So bad SQL basically, you can investigate which are the top SQL statements that are consuming the system resources, and to make all the potential improvements to fine tune that particular SQL statement. ADM will basically ADM will basically identify all the high load SQL statements. We already discussed about that, right? And if you want to check the impact, or if you want to check all the recommendations and suggestions of all the SQL statements, SQL Tuning Advisor can give you all the recommendations in what way you can change your SQL statements. Okay, when you use this SQL Tuning Advisor, it will automatically provide some recommendations for improvement of that particular high load SQL statements. This is only thing that you can do. If you even if you say that I have involved in SQL query optimization, half of, I told you right, in the parsing it will check in the parsing. If you remember, I told you that there is parsing involves in two steps. Basically, one is semantic analysis and one is syntax analysis, which will check the object attributes, which will check for syntax. There will be some kind of a security check, and the SQL will be automatically optimized, internally optimized by something called SQL processing engine in the Oracle database itself. Even after that, you will see SQL statements with high response times, high CPU, high DB time. To those SQL statements, you need to take all of them. ADDM will already help you which are all the high load SQL statements. And when you take help from SQL Tuning Advisor, which comes with Oracle Diagnostics Pack, it will provide all the recommendations and it will tell you some areas of, yeah. And there is always an issue with IO. Can any one of you tell me what is IO?
Sir, one question.
Yes, sir.
As you said that bad SQL is primarily dependent on how much, if one of the SQL queries taking too much of resources or consuming too much of resources, is that the only criteria to identify a bad SQL, or is there any other thing that can also cause that issue?
No. That is the only way to identify the high load SQL.
Okay, the high amount of resource consumption, right?
High amount of resource consumption, and all these high load SQLs will be directly identified by AWR top SQL section. One area was there, and ADDM it will show you all the top SQL statements that are taking high amount of percentages with respect to resource utilizations. Okay, it will also tell you how much DB time it is taking, how much CPU time it is taking. You can find all of these top SQLs, and by simply clicking on the SQL ID, it will take you that, it will navigate you to that particular SQL, and it will give you the complete information of that SQL. And when you report this incident to any of your DBA, he can rewrite the statement, and he can you can also use what I have explained here is, you can also use SQL Tuning Advisor, and you can adopt that changes whatever the recommendations that SQL Tuning Advisor is suggesting you. And it is not you who will rewrite it again. It is the DBA who can write the SQL query, and you have to rerun your test. He'll not he'll not make changes in one SQL statements. He has to consider all the top 10 high load SQL statements, and he has to make changes in all the SQL statements.
Okay. And one more thing, you just mentioned that somebody called ADM who has to work on these issues, right? What is the ADM means?
No, not ADM. I'm sorry. It is DBA. DBA has to work on it.
Okay, perfect.
So, and
Thank you, sir.
yeah, no issues. Thank you. So most of the times, right, the databases will have while I told you, right, designing an application or designing the hardware and software configuration of any of the database server, right, is a merit, is a unique skill. There is no direct thumb rule, or there is no predefined approach for doing application designing or architectural designing, or uh, to to decide the capacity. It is not. It will not happen by a specific process. Okay, there is a unique methodology, and it is a different unique additional skill for any of the project team. There is a different team who will decide your capacity of your systems. They will decide the maximum handling capacity of your application by considering the data growth for the next quarter or for the next 1 year. They'll decide, and many sites if you take, right, and if you consider your databases, the number of available disks for the database is set, uh, is not properly set when they decide the hardware and software configurations of any database. And when we cannot specify the number of disks correctly, you will see a high number of IO, more number of reads, more number of writes. You will see lot many disk issues, disk bottlenecks. Okay? If you don't configure your disks by disk space, and if you are not configuring with IO bandwidth, you will tend to see lot of disk issues. And even to decide disk, to configure the disks on your database, there is an approach, and there is a team, tools team or architectural team, where they will decide how many disks are required for your database configuration. If your database is 128 CPUs or 64 CPUs with 512 GB RAM or 128 GB RAM or 256 GB RAM, you need to get the right IO. If you're seeing the abnormal values in the IO, you have to go to disk separately, and you have to identify what is happening with the disk. Okay. So, and if you there is something called emergency performance method. Okay. There are few techniques to deal with something called performance emergencies, and there is no specific strategy to deal the performance emergencies. Do you know what is performance emergency method?
No.
No.
For example, there is one application. Even if you take the Amazon now, you must have noticed that Amazon has stopped all the services due to Corona crisis, right? All the services has been stopped. Now people are not getting the groceries outside because the shops and supermarkets are not open till next 15th, or it may get extend up to 31st of this month, and you're not getting anything online. If the government now is giving a permission to Amazon to sell all the groceries from next Thursday, you will see a high user rate on the site, and you will see this continuous high accessing, high volume on Amazon with high users at least for the next 4 days to 1 week. Okay. Now you have many users on the application, and even Amazon knows that many users will access the application and they'll try to make the payments. They will place so many orders. So already he will have some existing orders in place which are already stopped. He has to resume that. He has to start delivering all of them, and you will see very high traffic on the site. Okay. You got some performance issue on the production system. That means that uh, it is called emergency situation. It means any component of the system, any component across the infrastructure or in the production system stopped working, or it started giving you some errors. Page not found, server not found. Or now if you're trying to access the Amazon.in and the page is loading, you're not able to select the product. You are able to add items to the cart, but you are not able to proceed with the payment. These are all called bottlenecks, and these are called emergency performance methods. You need to take an immediate action. In such cases, the performance engineer or the DBA must rapidly determine what has changed, and you need to take immediate appropriate action to resume normal service as quickly as possible. At the earliest, you need to bring your application to the normal working conditions. If you don't bring it, you will lose a lot of users and lot of business from the site. I'm talking Amazon as an example. If an application that has been started very recently, if you have such instance in the start of 3 months or start of 6 months, no one will use it. If you remember exactly, some 3 years back or 4 years back, there is a competitor for IRCTC which is called Make My Trip. Okay, which will charge 20 rupees extra if you compare it with Make My Trip, IRCTC. But still, you have a guarantee that you can book a ticket for sure. The ticket is 250 rupees in IRCTC. Make My Trip will charge you 25 rupees extra, like which is 275. The reason is because the capacity of the servers that Make My Trip is using is are far better than IRCTC. And when you try to book a Tatkal ticket, even when you have a peak load with a minimal bandwidth connection, you have some assurance or you have some guarantee that you will get a confirmed ticket, right? After that, the rules has been changed and availing tickets from Make My Trip has been stopped. And every user has to book a ticket only from IRCTC because of something called NextGen. NextGen has given all the high capacity servers, high grade infrastructure with so many performance improvements. And majority of the servers, majority of the users are now able to book the ticket, right? Now, you will have some kind of emergency situations. You are not able to book the ticket. Now, you cannot do anything from IRCTC. That is, you know that error, and every user who are using this IRCTC knows that error. But in case of any of other applications, if you have any of an emergency situation when there is a need, you need, along with the DBA, the performance engineer has to look at the issue and he has to quickly identify. He has to determine and understand what has changed, and he has to take an appropriate action to bring your application back to normal condition. Okay, and in many of the cases, it is very much needed to take the immediate action, and you have to improve the performance then and there. It is not possible, but there are some cases where that is why the reason DBS will work in something called production support continuous shifts to take care of the database maintenance. They'll ensure that the database is not going down, the database is not getting slow, and they'll make sure that the database is serving all the user needs as expected with the industry standard numbers like 3 to 5 seconds of response time. And in such emergency situations, many users will report that we are not able to access the application in the production. Even your DBA will not be able to understand what happened. Now, the performance engineer only has to tell what happened. Okay, so now after addressing this immediate performance problem, after you get some inputs from the real users from production application, now the performance engineer must collect all the sufficient debugging information. What is the error message that you are getting, at what time you are getting, which functionality you are getting. Okay, he needs to get better clarity on the performance problem. If you don't get any of the clarity, or if you don't try to collect the sufficient debugging information with the logs, or if you don't look at the problem in different directions, or if you're not ensuring that it is not happening again and again, it will be a problem for everyone in the team. So there are no shortcuts to take an immediate action. You need to collect all the information. You need to sit along with your DBA, and you need to give the solution of that particular fix. I mean, of that particular problem. And again, these problems are repetitive, and tuning the database is an iterative process. Now you got some problem, you have to take an immediate action. You will give a fix and everything is working fine and it is back to normal state. You need to keep a track of all this incident. Okay, you need to keep a track. You need to keep the detailed notes and records of this particular incident, and you also need to document the debugging process on how you have fixed this issue. It's like a doctor keeping a patient notes for further reference. Tomorrow you must be seeing another issue which is creating a bottleneck again, right? So you will check whether it is the same problem or a similar kind of problem, and you go back to your last fix and see what you have done to fix that. So every time you fix something, you need to keep a track of that. You need to keep that notes with you to quickly understand the emergency situations, and this is called emergency performance method. And most majority of the companies, 90% of the projects, and forget about service-based companies. Service-based companies will never ever involve any of the performance engineers in emergency performance methods. It is only the DBS who will continuously monitor the database, who will have access to the database, who will take AWR, ASH, and ADDM, who will identify the performance bottlenecks, and it is ultimately it is them who is fixing all of them. There is no role for an performance engineer. But when you are involved in a project where you are trying to identify all the bottlenecks from the Oracle database, or if you're involved in an activity called a database replication testing, you are trying to migrate from open source databases to Oracle database. You are trying to bring all your applications into one single common database. When you try load tests with high number of users, you will see all these emergency performance methods. And if you are luckily if you are working with any of the product based companies, an opportunity will be given to you where you can define the behavior of any of the database. You can take all of them, you will get a chance to work on all of them, and whatever I have explained now, like you will collect all the sufficient debugging information, you will get a better clarity from the real-time users to fix that problem, and you will keep a notes of all of them, and this will be an iterative process. Okay, there are few steps that are involved in emergency performance method. uh, the best process to identify, I mean, the performance issues, or to quickly fix all of them, the first thing that you need to check all the symptoms of that performance problem. Okay, and you need to take the feedback from the real users on how the system is underperforming, or why it is slow, or the problem is with the response times or the throughput. When someone reports the problem, you need to immediately check the response time, throughput, and the resource utilizations, and you will get some idea on that after looking at all of them. Okay, and you need to ask some questions to the DBS, saying that did something changed? Okay, from the last test that we have performed, did something changed? uh, any of the versioning or or the architectures or the memories, some kind of schema changes, DB configuration changes. If the answer is yes, you need to ask them what has changed. Okay, because these kind of questions and answers will give you the clues on the performance problem. Okay, and basically you will get some unbiased answers in some escalated situations, but again you will get some clarity. Okay, you can also check some statistics. You can collect some statistics. You can go back and see all the log files. Uh, if you have not, if you have not taken any of the log files, or if you have not collected any of the statistics, you can simply run a test for 1 hour, and you can collect all of them, and to understand the problem. And you can also take help from automatic tuning features to diagnose and to look at all the different recommendations that you can get from the Oracle Diagnostics pack, and you can just to understand and to monitor the problem. And again, even in the emergency performance methods or emergency performance problems, right? Here also you will try to identify the top sequels and top sessions. You can make a note. What did you identify from your Oracle database? I always worried about these two parameters, top sequels and top parameters. Okay, and in order to understand the issue, or if you want to, if you are the only performance engineer, if you want to give the quick fix, no one is. I mean, if the client is continuously asking you to fix that particular issue that you are seeing in the production, there will be lot many DBAs and other teams will be involving, and they'll be continuously working. If you still want to give a fix, I mean, if you still want to investigate further, you can run a sanity check on the hardware utilization of all the components of your application. By running a test for 1 hour, you can check the highest CPU utilization in the last 1 hour. You can check your disk performance, you can check your memory usage, and you can also look at your network statistics, network performance of all the system components by having a right APM tool in place. You can use Windows Perfmon or Nmon, any of the utility on which operating system your database installed. Basically, this quickly identifies uh, by doing this thing right. It will quickly identify which tire is causing the problem. If the problem is in the application, right, you can directly shift back to the application tire and you can start your own debugging. You can hand over the issue to the middleware admin, WAS admin, WebSphere admin, or WebLogic admin. Otherwise you will continue your investigation on your database analysis. Okay, so here you will be monitoring at the sessions that are consuming large amounts of CPU from the operating system level, and from the database level, and you will look at the SQL statements along with PL SQL functions that perform high load time, and you also need to look at the execution plan. If the execution plan is changed, everything will have a negative impact. You need to ask your DBA whether the execution plan is changed or not changed, because there are something called suboptimal settings which will help for SQL execution. If the suboptimal settings are changed from the execution plan, and if the suboptimal settings are, I don't say that they are wrong, they are not properly given. Because of some suboptimal settings from the execution plan, it will create high load SQL statements, and this will be very difficult to locate. You will be knowing that there is some high load SQL statement. You never know why it is giving you high load time. That is why the reason you cannot. It is very difficult to learn and understand the execution plan for performance engineer, because he don't have any hands-on experience in writing queries, PL SQL queries, and he cannot do all these activities. Only with the help of the DBA, you have to ask him that what did something change in the execution plan, or is it the same thing that is there from the last 6 months or 1 year? If he's saying yes, it has been changed, Muhammad Adil, okay, there is some incorrect setting on the initialization parameters, and there can be some algorithmic issues caused by code changes or upgrade. So after talking all these things, right, the ultimate challenge for a performance engineer is you take AWR, ADDM, or ASH. I told you, right, bad connection management, algorithmic issues, coding issues, application design issues, or it can be issues with the upgrades. You have so many things. you cannot identify from which area is the problem, from which area you are seeing this problem. That is the main problem. Even if you have a full APM solution in place, you will never know whether it is a problem with the application design or hardware sizing, or it is directly from the RAM, or is it because of some improper configuration from the disk. You really don't know. Okay, so these are all the different things that you have, and the last concept is uh, hard parsing and soft parsing. Okay, maintaining user connections on the database is very important. Okay, to maintain these user connections sufficiently, you need to minimize your parsing activity on your system. What is parsing activity? There is something called parsing, and you have two different types of parsing. One is hard parsing and soft parsing. Okay, parsing basically it is the process of executing a SQL statement and creating an execution plan for that particular SQL. Okay, and I told you, right, this parsing has so many phases involved in it. What this parsing will do is, in the SQL execution engine in Oracle, basically this parser involves in many phases. This parsing, what it will do is, it will check the syntax checking, security checking, and it will check all the steps that are involved in a execution plan of a particular SQL. Okay, and there are two types of parsing. One is hard parsing and one is soft parsing. Basically, last time someone asked me, where can I see the soft parses? You also say you also have seen something called parses attribute in the load profile, which includes parses, means it includes parses and hard parses and soft parses. Soft parses are basically they don't create any problem 90% of the time. But when you talk about hard parses, right? If an SQL statement is in hard parsing, if SQL statement is submitted for the very first time, and there will be no match in something called shared pool. Okay, so when when a SQL is executed in hard parsing, there will be no match in the shared pool, and when it is not in the shared pool, a hard parse will take a lot of CPU utilization, memory utilization, and disk utilization. Okay, so when it is not sharing any of the resources, or it is when it is not there in the shared pool, I'll tell you what is shared pool later point of time when I show it to you in Oracle database hands-on. So basically, when you don't have this match in the shared pool, it will take high amount of CPU, memory, and disk, and basically it will give you high response times. But whereas in the soft parsing, right, when a SQL statement is submitted for the SQL execution for the very first time, a match will be found in the shared pool. Okay, this soft parsing, when the match is found in the shared pool, it means that there is some already that it is finding a result of a previous execution that by another user. The same query has been executed by another user, and that query was already there in the shared pool. Okay, basically what is happening here, the SQL statement is being shared by a shared pool to all the users. All the users are executing from a shared pool. The same SQL statement is reused by n number of multiple users with something called shared pool, and it will give you a very good performance. But it is not the case in hard parse. Hard parse, when a SQL query is submitted for an execution, it goes to the shared pool, and it will not find any match. So it has to go, it has to check for everything for the first time. It has to occupy the CPU, memory, and disk. then obviously it will take a lot of time. Okay, when the SQL statement is shared, so more people will be using it. The same query will be executed for multiple times, and as it has been already checked for syntax analysis and semantic analysis, it will not check the SQL every time when the soft parse comes in for every user, which will improve the response time in a very good manner. Okay, now if you ask me, okay, so this is all about soft parsing and hard parsing. And this parsing value, right, it should not be high. If you see the high parsing value, then it means that there is a bottleneck. You are having high number of hard passes, which it is going to hard passes. It is not able to find anything in the shade pool. It is taking too much of time. Every time a user goes in, he is individually executing the query alone, and where it will spend a lot of time to execute that particular query. But whereas in the soft parsing, it is not the case. It is using the shade pool. It is all the users are trying to use the same query, reuse it for multiple times from the shade pool, as it is already semantic checked, semantic analysis checked, and syntax checked, and security checked. Okay. Parsing should be minimized as much as possible, and application developers should design their application to parse the SQL statements. Uh, or it can be executed once, or it can be executed as many times as possible. It depends on, again, the application design. Okay, and I'll tell you all the different. I can send you all the bottlenecks. You go through all of them. If you have any questions, you can call me anytime. You can come back to me. I am, because the reason why I'm not explaining the bottlenecks now is I initially want all of you to go through the bottlenecks. At least if you understand what is that bottleneck uh, saying, then we can discuss about the remaining areas. First thing I want all of you to do is you go through all these bottlenecks. I'll send you the document. Read it. Then if you have any questions, please come back to me, and I'll help you. I'll also help you on how to install this Oracle database along with the application. There are some dummy simulators where it can generate some dummy data. From that, you can generate AWR, ADDM, ASH, and go log into Oracle Enterprise Manager. Play with all the options that are available in Oracle database. If you don't know anything, any basics of the Oracle database, don't try to install it on Linux. It will be very hard for you to understand the installation process and on how to open it. If any one of you have some good experience in Linux, then you can install it on Linux. I don't have any problem. If this is the first time, if you are installing the Oracle database, creating some sample database, uploading some dummy data into your databases, doing all these activities, do it on Windows. It will learn you. It will teach you something. Don't try it on Linux. All right. Do you guys have any questions?
Yeah. Hey, Kumar.
It's not Kumar. I'm Radha. Yes, please tell me.
Hello?
Yes, tell me.
Yeah. Hey, you said you're gonna help us downloading SQL. You wanna help us download
Oracle database.
Oracle database. Okay. Can you write some guidelines on how to do it, please?
No. See, there are many versions. This AWR report, ASH, ADDM, it started from Oracle 10G. Before that, you don't have any of the versions. Now, if you look at the Oracle version, you have something called 19C, which comes with the cloud. You don't really need it. Currently, the stable version is Oracle 12C release 2. You can make a note. Oracle 12c release 2 is a stable version, and still many of the companies are using only 11, not even 12. If you can install the 11.x version, it is very good actually. If it is 12, you will have some advanced features in it. You will have some additional advisors and tuning sessions, some inbuilt performance tools that you have. Install 12c release 2, and there is a step-by-step procedure is already available in oracle.docs.com. If you can take the help of that oracle.docs.com with 12c installation, you will be able to install it. It's a very easy. It will not take much time. It will take 10 minutes for you, but for the installation to happen on your laptop, it might take some 20 to 30 minutes to install all the files. Okay.
Okay, one more question. So you said that you'll be sharing us the bottleneck documentation, right? So you're sharing us in the group or you're mailing us?
No. Anita will share actually, because not all of them have joined the class, right? In the group, there are many people in the group. So yeah, I'll ask Anita to share with all of you. I have written some notes. There is some important notes that which will help you for all your interview evaluations. I'll send all the documents by today end of the day. Oracle is done for today. So I'll send you whatever the information that I have from Oracle. I'll ask Anita to share all the docs with you all.
Okay,
RK.
This ASH, I'm sorry, this ASH, that PPT that you're referring for, right? So that is also will be shared through
Everything will
Anita
be
ma'am.
shared. Everything
Okay.
will be shared. What I need is, you need to spend your time. I can give you 4 GB or 5 GB of data, only the docs. You need to spend some time and you need to go through all the docs. That's all. I'll send you all the information, whatever information I have with Oracle and other databases tuning. I'll share all of them. No issues.
Thank you.
Yeah, RK, I have a question. Like you told for the lab setup, right? You told we can install an application and we can install a DB. But do you provide any of the application WAR files or something so that we can?
I'll give you one WAR file.
Okay. How do we connect that WAR? I mean that application to the database.
I'll give you the guidelines. I'll help you.
You'll be giving us
So
the help.
I would like to highlight one point here. Okay, you need to start with some basic activities. Basic activities are nothing but, how many of you know how to deploy a WAR file? Okay,
Yeah, I have done it in WebSphere middleware. But when it comes to on some other middleware, I need guidance on deploying.
see, two things. Going forward, everything will be an open source. Okay, the trend already started. Majority of the companies or clients have started using all the open source products. They want to utilize all of them to the fullest. Okay, so even if you take the middleware, right? WebSphere is a very expensive middleware server. That is why the reason people go back and use WebLogic, because WebLogic is an open source. People use Tomcat because it is an open source, but it has got the similar security features and other features that are already there in WebSphere. 90% of the features that WebSphere has, the same features we have in WebLogic and Tomcat, Apache Tomcat. Apache is a web server and Tomcat is basically an app server. Apache Tomcat is a web app server. It is doing your activity with one server called Web Application Server. So there are few basic things that you need to understand from your side. How how do I connect my WebLogic server with Oracle database server? How do I look at my table? How do I access my data in my table in a database? These are all few things, some basics. You being a performance engineer, when you're monitoring or when you're looking at all the components in an architecture, you need to have the right basics. Okay, Many of you know that there are some 4 algorithms in load balancer. How many of you know where to change the load balancer algorithm in FPI load balancer or Nginx load balancer? No one. Even a performance engineering manager with a reputed product-based company don't know where to change the algorithm of load balancer. It is not required. But these questions are now asked in majority of the interviews. When you say that performance testing with engineering with 10 years experience, these questions are asked. So for that reason, you need to connect something from server to server. You need to build your own client server architecture, a simple one. You need to understand what will happen from the front end and back end systems and how you can configure one monitoring tool to your existing architecture and how you can connect all of this activity to your load runner or JMeter. There are so many plugins. You can connect anything with anything, with any server. All are pluggable connections now. So you just go through the basics. When I show it to you, I'll help you uh, on how to do all these activities.
Okay,
Okay.
so which kind of application you will be giving the demo?
I'll tell you. I'll tell you.
Okay, okay, and with the Oracle DB or
No, the reason why we spoke a lot about Oracle DB is because we will talk only about Oracle.
okay, okay.